History has always advanced thanks to three things: culture, science, and wars. Humanity has brought Earth to a state where finding something common and unifying for all the planet's inhabitants is almost impossible. Some people believe in God, while others don't. Some prefer communism, while others favor capitalism. By 2023, perhaps the only thing capable of bringing joy to people anywhere in the world is, unsurprisingly, money. To be more precise, currency. What modern people refer to as money is, in reality, currency. These two concepts may seem like one and the same, but in truth, things are a bit more complex. Money, by definition, is something with intrinsic value. Currency, on the other hand, is merely paper, a coin, or even a stone that signifies an object equivalent to the monetary value of one cow. Therefore, it's not entirely accurate to say that ancient Egypt lacked money. You're likely aware that they practiced a system of direct exchange of goods for other goods. This gives the impression that the country was somewhat backward. In reality, it was quite the opposite. Ancient Egypt had all the hallmarks of a developed state. Pharaohs issued decrees explaining that a certain amount of grain equaled a specific amount of beer. There was a complex tax system for every profession, where workers gave roughly 1/3 of their produced goods to the state. In general, it's the same as today. The only difference is that, without a unified currency, the system appeared cumbersome and difficult to comprehend. However, ancient Egypt's challenges with creating a full-fledged currency did not disappear. It didn't matter whether coins were made of bronze, silver, or gold. The issues relevant in Egypt only worsened with the growth of global trade. How could you purchase Chinese silk with coins minted in Rome? What was worth more, a Roman denarius or a Greek drachma? When paper money entered the scene, as you might guess, things became even worse. Humanity was faced with the need for something standardized, unified, and universally recognized for international trade. Thus, the term reserve currency was born, money created in one country but willingly accepted in others, sometimes even for transactions where the issuing country was not directly involved. Today, the reserve currency is the US dollar, but there have been many reserve currencies throughout history. If we're being thorough, the list could start with the ancient Greek drachma, which was used across the Mediterranean long before our era. However, the scale was not the same, so let's focus on later and more global developments. The first truly global currency, in the modern sense of the term, emerged in the 13th century, the Florentine florin, the currency of the tiny Florentine Republic, whose population in 1494 did not exceed 1 million people. However, this currency was used across virtually all of Europe. The secret of its success was gold. Before Florence, Europe had relied on the silver standard of Charlemagne for 5 centuries. But gold was far easier to melt into standardized sizes, detect forgeries, and transport. The florin captured the hearts of merchants everywhere, with its consistent weight, dimensions, and the robust banking system of Florence that supported it. Venice soon adopted the florin as well, giving it a slight rebranding. This led to the creation of the ducat, and by the 15th century, Europe had 150 mints producing a unified coin for the continent. In essence, this marked the establishment of the global financial system as we understand it today. Venice became the birthplace of the first public banks, the sale of government bonds to the public, and unified trade networks spanning the continent. The convenience offered by Italian bankers turned seemingly small states like Florence and Venice into extraordinarily wealthy powerhouses of their era. But kings do not rule forever. The history of global reserve currencies has always been tied to major events on the world stage. The Italians dominated the financial system thanks to their unique position at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. The Crusades, the spice trade, and the decline of the Roman Empire with its capital in Constantinople gave them a competitive edge. By the early 16th century, however, global attention had shifted. In 1479, Aragon and Castile united into a single state, marking the beginning of Spain's dominance on the continent. Shortly thereafter, in 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered America. Later still, in 1535, gold and silver mining began on the American continent. This marked the dawn of the age of exploration, and those at the forefront naturally took control of the financial system. For a brief period, Portugal, with its real, took the lead, but the true giant was Spain. Vast silver deposits in Bolivia, coupled with the influence of Charles V, who was simultaneously the King of Spain and the Holy Roman Emperor, gave the Spanish real a blank check to dominate the world's largest trade network. As a result, smaller players were also forced to use it. For example, British colonists in America struggled with cash shortages. Transporting it from Europe was cumbersome and slow, while nearby Spanish-established colonies were brimming with silver coins. The British, and later the Americans, pragmatically adopted the Spanish real for their transactions, further solidifying the currency's role in global trade. In fact, it was the Spanish coins, referred to as dollars in America, that laid the foundation for the modern dollar. The silver standard adopted by the United States in 1785 was entirely modeled on the Spanish dollar. For nearly 2 centuries, the Spanish dollar was the world's primary international currency. Its dominance was eventually challenged by the Dutch guilder, which capitalized on Spain's decline. Despite being a tiny nation, the Netherlands in the 16th century built the largest trade network on the planet. Lacking the vast resources of Spain or Britain, the Dutch relied on sheer ingenuity and determination to create the Dutch East India Company, the largest corporation in history, whose influence Apple and Microsoft could only dream of matching. A remarkable 25% of 17th century inventions were developed by the Dutch. Capitalism, as we understand it today, complete with national debt, credit systems, and private ownership, was also pioneered in the Netherlands. Concepts like inflation, liquidity, and other advanced financial terms, which were groundbreaking at the time, fueled the Netherlands' wealth and growth. Their currency facilitated 30% of global transactions. However, from across the sea, their success drew the envious eyes of another colonial empire, the British. By the late 17th century, Britain had become a global powerhouse, with territorial ambitions naturally supported by financial strength. This is where Sir Isaac Newton came into play. In addition to his contributions to physics, Newton was a skilled economist. Thanks to his recommendations, the gold standard officially replaced the Spanish silver standard in 1821, and the British pound became the next global currency, handling over 60% of the world's transactions. Challenging the might of the British Empire, which controlled a quarter of the Earth's landmass, would have seemed like madness or the ambition of a German. The dominance of the pound was one of the reasons Germany declared war on the Old World Order in 1914. Had Germany won, the new reserve currency would have been the mark. However, Germany's defeat did not preserve Britain's dominance in global financial markets. World War I is often called the killer of empires, yet the British Empire is rarely included alongside the Russian and Ottoman empires on that list. But it should be. The war dealt a severe blow to Britain as well. One by one, its colonies began breaking away, effectively transitioning to self-governance. Resources were severely strained during the war, and Britain's primary creditor became the United States. By that time, the American dollar, already backed by gold, was widely used to finance France and Britain in the conflict. At the same time, 9 out of 10 dollars borrowed by France and Britain from the US were spent in America, giving the US a double advantage. Not only did the US boost its domestic production, but it also effectively lived on borrowed money at others' expense. In essence, a behind-the-scenes conflict between the US and Britain began right after World War I. The Americans demanded strict repayment of debts, while the British pushed for war debts to be forgiven, arguing that the US had already profited substantially. A middle ground was reached. The British converted their debts from short-term to long-term obligations, while the Americans gained leverage to influence Britain's political decisions by exploiting its precarious position. As a result, the Foggy Albion lost its authority as the world's banker. This loss was cemented after World War II in a way whose significance few truly grasp. On July 22, 1944, the Bretton Woods system of international financial relations was established. It is often described as a system where the dollar became the world's reserve currency, and all international settlements were conducted in dollars. However, the impact of the Bretton Woods system was even greater. For the first time in human history, the dollar became not just a currency but actual money. Remember how we discussed the distinction between these terms earlier? The silver standard meant that money was silver, while currency served as a means of converting silver. The gold standard was the same concept, only with gold. But in 1944, the US dollar became money and the foundation of all global finance. Even when the Spanish dollar was the world's reserve currency, silver remained its underlying standard. When the British pound was the global currency, gold was its foundation. But in 1944, the basis of any currency became another currency. This is the key difference of the new system. The fact that the dollar was pegged to gold wasn't a gold standard. It was instead a dollar standard. And it wasn't a case of 1 troy ounce of gold costing $35, but rather $35 buying 1 ounce of gold. This is why the dollar's decoupling from gold in 1971 had little impact on the global economy. It was already dollar-based, and gold played only a minimal role. Today, we operate under the rules of the 1976 Jamaican monetary system, which introduced floating exchange rates, currency exchange mechanisms, and the dollar as the world's reserve currency. The dollar's influence seems fundamental and unshakable. But as you've already learned, history has seen many reserve currencies once considered unbeatable. Based on historical analysis, many economists conclude that global currencies will always come and go. This happens in standard cycles of 100 to 200 years, simply because no ruler reigns forever and history moves in spirals. These days, it's trendy to draw graphs showing the Chinese yuan supposedly dethroning the dollar to become the next reserve currency. There are even rumors that China plans to bring back the gold standard. But that's no longer history, that's economics. We've covered the historical part. If you'd like to learn more details about the history of money, let us know in the comments. See you next time.